So this is Bunmi. You're welcome to the Clapper Mixing Masterclass. Today we're going to be diving into the art of audio mixing and enhancing your mixing skills and exploring the innovative clapper method. Today we'll be covering the clapper system, and inside the clapper system, all these questions will be answered, which is how to get your loud mixes, how to get clarity in your mix, how to make your mixes to translate on all playback speakers, how to use harmonic distortion to enhance your mix, and how to create a fourth dimension, 3D and 4 dimension in your depth of field in your mixes. If you don't know me, I'm Bunmi, and my mission is to help music producers worldwide create professional record with ease. And I have been in the music industry for 25 years. I have 2 Grammy nominations. I won a BAGMA award in 2016. And I've been blessed to work with major label artists like Beyonce, Rihanna, Ray J, T-Pain, Sosa Sam. I also had some placement on TV shows, BET, MTV, Oxygen, Star-B, CBS. And I've sold a bunch of copies on mixing and preset on my website. Also recorded over 3,000 artists worldwide. And these are some affiliations that people I've worked with. That is the proof of my Grammy nomination. And these are some of the Hollywood people I've worked with. This is Layla, Tupac manager, who is now managing Earl Sweatshirt and a bunch of other artists. This is Jason Joshua, Dave Pensado. If you're in the mixing game, you should know all these guys. And this is Ali Saeed, which is a Tribe Called Quest. And this is one of a project I work with that was on Billboard. So the foundation of audio mixing is expected that you understand the basics of audio mixing before we dive into the clapper system, because the clapper system is built on top of the basics of audio system. It's not really for beginner, but if you're a beginner, this is a way to fast track your way to the expert level with the understanding of clapper system. So I'm assuming you guys already know the basics of audio mixing, which is EQing, compression, gain staging, balancing, reverb, delay, and all that good stuff. So why the clapper system? After studying numerous mixing gurus and practicing for years to develop my own style and trying to perfect my taste, I reached a point where I started to document everything I learned and all my practices, because I practiced mixing every day for about 2 to 3 years nonstop. And in this period of time, I started collecting and jotting down everything that I love about my mixes. And after documenting all this, I put together some stuff to create the clapper method. And I added all the highlights and all the attributes that I love about all the methods of different gurus that I've learned from. And I put them together to kind of give me a map, what a philosophy and a mindset, a framework, so to speak, to always use as a guideline to get me to the finish line. So the C of the clapper stands for the clarity. With the C, we want to get maximum clarity, because during my studies, I realized the 2 goals that I, as a producer and a mix engineer, try to get to is maximum clarity. And how do we get to maximum clarity? We get to maximum clarity by EQing and by focusing on 3 to 4 elements in the mix and making all these main 4 elements fit together like a puzzle. Because if we don't build on this foundation, we can't get to the L, which is the maximum loudness. So maximum loudness is dependent on your C, which is the maximum clarity. And what do I mean by that? Because normally when you put a L2 or limiter on your mix bus and you crank everything to the top and you hit that 0 ceiling and your dynamics started crushing down, what I notice is the quicker you get to that crush on the 0 is because of lack of clarity in your mixes. Let me explain that a different way. So for example, if we have a kick, a snare, a hi-hat, a bass, and a lead vocal, those are the Those are the four things that I focus on in every mix to get this to the four C and L, which is the maximum clarity and the maximum loudness. If you don't really carve space for each of these elements in a mix and you hit your limiter bus, you're gonna crap out faster compared to when you have all these four elements perfectly EQ'd and they all fit together like a glove. It will take a longer time before you hit that zero level, and you would have gotten so much loudness out of your mix before you get to that zero level. I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, maybe you guys can ask me a question. And before I move on to the other part, do you have any questions so far on the C and L? Because this two part of the framework is they're very important. Any question?
I do got a question. Are you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Hello, Brian.
Hey, what's up?
So, what's the question?
Um, you said those are the, let's say, the drums and the vocal. Call those out, and they're the ones that you focus on pertaining to the maximum loudness.
I think your volume is kind of low. Can you maybe turn your mic up a little bit? All right.
Hear me a little bit better or no?
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, better. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying you're saying these are the elements that we should use to get that maximum loudness.
Yes. So let me break it down again. On the C, we have to get the main element of the mixes, which is the lead vocal in every song. Lead vocal is the number one priority. Then after that, the kick is the number two priority. In some genre, kick is the number one priority, then the vocal. Sometimes in different genre it varies, but I'm assuming in every song, the lead vocal is the main priority. The kick is the next priority. The bass line is the third. The snare drum and the iron, and maybe another element, another melodic, rhythmic melodic element in the song. Those are those are all, they all come in those hierarchy. So what I'm saying is, once you have your main element, those are your anchor. We call those like the anchor of the mix. And you want to get those anchor of the mix to maximum loudness. And this is another thing. So we want to get them to maximum loudness. How do we do that? We make sure those three or four main elements they fit together with our maximum clarity using EQ. And we use EQ, we use sidechain, we use EQ sidechain and any dynamic EQ and compressors to make sure all these four or three to four elements fit together like a glove. And once you do that, then we go to the L. We want to make sure each of these elements hit the zero level. This system is the opposite of what they teach you most of the time on YouTube. They tell you when you're mixing, mix low first. Then when you're done, then you master. This is not what the clapper system is about. The clapper system is the main element of the mix, the anchor element of the mix. We hit them at the 0 dB peak from the beginning, which means your kick is in zero peak level from the beginning. Your bass is hitting zero peak level from the beginning. Your vocal is hitting zero peak level from the beginning. And your snare is in zero peak level from the beginning. So I'm going to show you in my Ableton Live after we talk about the theory so you can see practical what I'm doing. So that is the foundation. So we make sure all this, they hit zero from the beginning. And after that, we make sure that we use EQ to make sure they fit together, because if they don't fit together with EQ properly, then we're going to be hitting our 0 dB in our L2 in the master bus way quicker compared to when we have an element, when we have an element in the mix that fit together properly with EQ. Does that make sense, Bren, Amasa?
Yeah, it make a lot of sense, especially when you point out the misconception of what we maybe come across on YouTube.
Yeah.
because definitely that's really the model there, you know, and I'm just gonna point this out too. Working working with you, I think my greatest struggle is just reprogramming my brain.
Yeah.
So it was very good for you to point out that too, because we're coming to you with all these concepts that it's not really what we should have been taught in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Masa, are you able to chime in on what we just talked about? Hello, Masa, are you there? Since we're not hearing from us, from Masa, let's just move on. So the A is the speaker adaptation, and what the A in the clapper system stands for is to help us rectify the problem that I have and most mix engineers and producer have during the mixes, which is the translation issue. Say most of the time when you do a mix, you finish the mix and you take it to a car or you play it on a phone and you realize that a whole bunch of information are missing it in your mixes. The translation problem is a big problem for me when I was studying mixing, and I online it's a whole bunch of people having the same problem. So how did we solve this with a clapper system? In the clapper system, I'm going to show you a practical example on my Ableton Live how to solve this problem. But to cover the theory part of it, we solved the problem by using parallel processing and harmonic saturation and harmonic distortion. So what we do is for all the main element of our mixes, we do a parallel processing with them and we remove the fundamental frequency of those elements. What do I mean by that? For those who don't understand what I mean by that, every sound they have, every sound have a fundamental frequency, overtone, and the harmonic series. So we have, let's say, if you play a piano, which is a key C, a key C of C2 is 65 hertz. That's the fundamental of the frequency. Then after the fundamental, there's the second, the first order of harmonic, the third order of harmonic, and it goes on like that. So when we trying to create uh we're trying to create harmonic series for our main element to make sure they come out on small speakers because small speakers they can replicate very very low frequency depending on what kind of speakers you have. If you're playing back from a laptop, we know most laptop they crap out from 100 down below or 300 down below, depending on the speakers. Phone speakers, the same thing, but around 100 to 300, they all crap out. So what we want to do is we want to create a parallel processing with distortion, saturation, and we want to remove the lower fundamental of those main element. For example, bass line. This is the first thing that disappears because when you mix bass, when you're mixing your bass, the fundamental they're around 60 to 100 and sometimes 40 all the way to 100 depending what kind of bass you're using. So we create parallel processing and we use harmonic saturation to push the overtone series up in the frequency range. So we're going from 100, 200, 300, 400, creating harmonic series for the bass line. So when it's played on speakers, we can hear them properly. That's how we solve it with the clapper system. And the next part of the clapper system is the punchy groove. And the reason I put this as part of the clapper system is because over the years, I realized that when I'm mixing, by the time I start putting plugins on my sessions, those plugins they introduce very micro milliseconds. And if you're not careful, if you have a groove that's already been locked, and a groove that's already been locked into a timing, and you add in all these plugins, and those plugins they introduce 10 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds. Before you know it, all the groove is shifting out of grid. And that happens over the time. I'm like, okay, that's the reason why I put the P in the clapper system, because I always have to remind myself that after I'm done with the mixing, I have to check all these milliseconds of the shifting of the groove and use my delay compensation in my groove to move the groove back to where they need to be. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Then the E is related to the A, but I still put it in there because besides using harmonic saturation to solve the translation problem on every playback speakers, we want to introduce harmonic distortion all around the mix in the master bus as well. Very minimal master bus to create some type of motion, because that's what the saturation and distortion, they create depth for all our elements. So how do I use this? I put them in different bosses of my mixes. So I have a drum boss. I make sure I put harmonic saturations on there. Bass boss, I put harmonic saturations on there. Vocal box, I put harmonic saturation on there. And now music boss, I put harmonic saturation on there. Just very minimal to have much layers and depth into the mix. And also I put them in the mix box as well. So very important. Last but not the least is the 4D realism. If your mix doesn't have depth, it's it sounds flat and like 2D, because the way we hear, the way we see in the real world is always in depth. We can never hear in a one dimensional or two dimensional in the real life. If you see wherever you are right now, if you close your eyes and focus, you can hear something closer to you. You can hear something coming in the mid ground, something in the background, and something moving from forward and back. And we have to recreate that in our mix to be able to sound very realistic and to imitate the nature. So all these 6 elements, they're what I put together for you guys to be able to understand the clapper system. Any questions so far?
No, I don't have any more questions. I just, at this point, I'm just absorbing everything.
All right. My computer, unfortunately, is crapping out. I think because of the plugins and the mixes, and I'm running Zoom on the same computer, so it's not letting my sound come out. Because I really want to show you this mix that I use the clapper system for. But if I'm not able to play them yet, what I can do is just trying to show you what is going on. So the clapper system, I start from the kick drum, because to me, kick drum is one of the biggest anchor of every mix in this today's genre. So we have the top genre right now: pop, rap, Afrobeat. Those are the ones that are popping in America. I don't know in the other countries what are the top genre over there. And in all those top genre, kick drum is the biggest driving force when it comes to setting the loudness of the mix. So I start with a kick drum. And the way I use the clapper system is because I'm going through I created a clapper wave chain, and this will be available